Greetings, everyone. This is Dr. Ray Lindley from Array Global Accreditation. Welcome to this regular third Saturday of every month workshop that we're doing. We're excited about today's workshop, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So I know that you're probably all sitting in warm weather, or most of you are sitting in warm weather. In fact, it's interesting that when I've been communicating with some people in the Arab countries, they say it's cold here. And I said, do you have snow on the ground? And most people are amazed that both Dr. Jake, who lives in northern Idaho, and myself, who live in Denver, Colorado, we have a lot of snow on our ground. So if you want to see snow, you can visit either one of us and we'll show you snow. But we're excited to have you with us here today for this workshop, which we will introduce in just a moment. And Dr. Jake, I think you have a few words that you needed to say also.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the snow, Dr. Ray, because in where I'm at, northern Idaho, it is 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is probably what, -5 Celsius, a little chilly. We probably have a half a meter at least of snow, so it's beautiful out. It's probably a little hard to see outside my my window here, but there's some snow on the trees outside. Just a few different announcements that I want to make sure that everyone is aware of. One of the most exciting activities that we have going on right now is our Performing Arts Academic Contest for your students. It's the Making Melodies Music Contest. So you can have your students join, whether they sing a song or if they play an instrument, have them join this activity. It's free. There's cash prizes. There's certificates that are provided for your students. And we'd love to see the musical talent that takes place throughout the world. We also wanted to announce a really neat activity that we do every year to encourage students to be out in their community and conduct service. It's called Me and My Community. And this is an award and honor if a student does 20 or more hours of community service, we will recognize them in an awards assembly. And it's a great way to get a certificate, something for a student to put on their resume. And a student from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12 can participate in this. And we always have so many people involved in this every year. So please get onto our website. I'll put some of this information in the chat. And throughout the workshop, if you have questions, please put it in the chat. We'll respond to those. At the end of the workshop, after Dr. Ray has done his Dr. Ray's words of wisdom, we will post a link in the chat for you to fill out. It's a Google form, so you can get your certificate. And we send the certificates out usually on Wednesdays is when we send that out. And again, if you have any questions or if we can help you out in any way, if you're interested in having your school accredited by Array Global, please let us know. If your school is already accredited by Array Global, please get onto our website. We'd love to talk to you about our accreditation with merit program that we have and all the other services that we have. So please let us know how we can help. We're here to help and support you and provide a quality education for each student. Dr. Ray, back to you.
Well, thank you. And we're excited about the activities that are coming up. And we hope that you will be part of that. Especially, we hope you'll be part of the contest that we're having. I had a question about if they can sing any song or lyrics with or without accompaniment. And the answer is yes. We want to see the students' talent, and we'll be happy to accept anything that's musical in nature. I'm really excited to introduce a longtime friend of ours today. Mr. Ahmed Ali is, we've worked together for at least 10 or 12 years, I believe, and been a tremendous support for us. And we hope that you will also recognize his contributions to the field of education. He has just within the last 2 or 3 years been the founder of Eduverse System, which if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to look up their website and see what it is. He's now the co-owner and general director of Eduverse. And not to diminish it, but he's just finishing his doctorate at the University of Buckingham. And so soon we'll be able to refer to him as Dr. Ahmed Ali. But right now he has all of the the skills that we really, really appreciate. So Ahmed, the show is yours. If we want to call it a show, we're happy to have you with us. And we will listen for what you have to give to us today.
Thank you so much, Ray, and thank you, Jake, for this introduction. And I hope this workshop would be light and interesting for everybody. Also, I see Tony, an old friend. Let me say hi. And I do thank everybody for attending this workshop. This workshop is about a very important concept in education, which is about feedback. And before I share my screen and start the presentation, let me highlight something really important about feedback because normally when we think about feedback, we think about like the teacher-student relationship. However, I'd like to draw your attention at the beginning that today I'm not only going to tackle this dimension of feedback, which is one dimension of feedback, which is a teacher-student relationship, but also it is a very important concept when it comes to, the work environment as a whole. So feedback is there between administrators, between administration and teachers, between heads of department and their teachers, and so on. And at so many stages during this workshop, I'm going to emphasize this concept. I'm sharing my screen now. I just hope that you can see the presentation. Is it clear to everybody?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the main points that I'm going to go through very quickly today is what is feedback? Why feedback? Why is it important? Metaphors for understanding feedback, metaphors that will help you understand feedback from several dimensions, characteristics of effective feedback, types of feedback, gamified feedback, and automated feedback software. And finally, and this is what my favorite part, which is the language of feedback. So very quickly, feedback is, as I assume you all know, is the information given to the learner or the teacher about their performance, given to the learner or the student in a class by the teacher, or even given by the teacher through an administrator or head of department. So this is feedback. And of course, feedback is a two-way process. So just as the student receives feedback from the teacher also receives feedback from the student. The important question is why feedback? Why is it important in the educational setting? Feedback actually helps educators improve their practice by identifying the strengths and areas of improvement, which is normally identified or pinpointed through the feedback process that goes here and there. So usually the teacher identifies the strengths or weaknesses of a certain student through the feedback that he or she receives by the student, and also by receiving feedback from the teacher, the student knows where they are, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and so on. In a nutshell, feedback results in improved student learning, increased teacher effectiveness, enhancing the student motivation and engagement, which we will also highlight in one of the metaphors that will help you understand what feedback is. The coming part is a very interesting and a very important part that will help us delve more into what feedback means. There are 5 metaphors that we will see now that can help you understand what feedback means in online learning and generally speaking. Feedback could be a treatment. Mind you, this is just, a metaphor. It could be coaching, it could be a command, it could be a dialogue, or it could be a learning tool. This means that you can understand feedback by, thinking about these five metaphors. We will take them one by one. Feedback is a treatment. Here, when you look at the learner, just like a patient, and you look at the teacher, just like a physician or a doctor. And by giving feedback to the learner, it's just like as if you're giving them the medication, you're helping them improve, and so on. Feedback is coaching. Again, this is another meaning of feedback. When you think of the relationship between a teacher and the student, like a coach and the team players. So the coach's role is to guide, is to motivate, is to encourage, the team players to do their best to improve, to tell them about their weaknesses, to ask them to act in a certain way. And so the teacher does in the classroom. And the head teacher does with other teachers. When if you are a head of department, for example, or an administrator at a school, and you visited a teacher and you have a certain point of view about their performance. If you have some points to tell the teacher to take care of, or some advice that the teacher can take to improve his performance or her performance, it is the same here. So you can think of feedback as a kind of coaching to a team player, through which this team player can improve their performance. So feedback could be a treatment, could be coaching, it could be a command. Some people might think of feedback as a set of instructions that you give to somebody for them to improve their performance. So from this point of view, feedback can be seen as a command, some instructions that are given. And feedback can also be a learner tool. And feedback, a learner tool, that means you look at feedback from the learner's point of view, not from the person who gives the feedback, but from the point of view of the person who receives the feedback. I can use feedback to improve my performance, to know my strengths and my weaknesses, and to get the max out of my performance. So in this case, feedback can be considered a learner tool. Finally, feedback as a dialogue. And this is very important because some people think that when you give feedback, it is just one way. Feedback is never one way. Feedback is best viewed as, two channels, as a two-way relationship. I give feedback to somebody and I receive their feedback. I accept their comments on my feedback. We discuss it together so that we, reach the final result or the best outcome from the process itself. And this is my suggestion to everybody, for teachers and for teacher trainers. When we deal with feedback, we need to think of feedback as a tool that we use to improve the performance, to improve the process itself. The reason why somebody gives feedback to somebody is that they want this process to be executed, to be implemented, to be performed in the best possible way. And this should be also the student or the teacher's purpose by receiving the feedback. They want to know what they did well, what they didn't do that well, what can be improved in the future, so that the entire process becomes much better in the future.
Ahmed, could I just ask a quick question? And I don't
Yeah,
know if
sure.
we're going to cover this in a little bit, but as you're explaining these different types of feedback and the importance of them, what comes to my mind is visible feedback. Sometimes when no word is said, but visibly the teacher or the supervisor gives if you're following me, visible feedback, a shrug of the shoulders or a grin on the face, or are you going to be talking about this type of feedback?
Definitely, when we come to types of feedback and language of feedback, you know,
Yes.
I think this makes sense in this particular area. Maybe it's not clearly stated in my presentation here, but definitely feedback doesn't always have to be verbal. This is what we're going to see in the types of feedback.
Right. Because I think a
Okay.
lot of us sometimes forget that, and we don't realize how our very bodily actions, that's feedback too.
Yeah, sure. All these metaphors that I've just said, like, let me go through them very quickly again. Treatment, coaching, command, dialogue, learner tool. So these are five different interpretations of feedback, if we might say. Five different metaphors that we can help you understand feedback from different dimensions. Now we're gonna go to effective feedback strategies. If I'm a teacher trainer giving feedback to teachers, or if I'm a teacher giving feedback to students, how can I ensure, and I think this is a question that is really important for everybody, how can I ensure that my feedback is effective? Because giving feedback is not enough. I have to give it the way that makes it effective, that makes it really improves the process. Here we're going to use an acronym for this, which is feedback that sticks. And by sticks, I'm not talking about this picture that you see on the corner of my presentation. Sticks refers to 6 features of feedback. So S for specific, T for tied to evidence, I for includes identified action steps, or we can say it should be actionable, checked for follow-up, kindly delivered, and this will be also relevant to the language of feedback, which we're gonna go through at the end of this presentation, and definitely student-centered. Feedback has to focus on the student, the person we're giving the feedback to. So again, remember, sticks, specific, tied to evidence, actionable, checked for follow-up, kindly delivered, and student-centered. Any feedback that has these 6 features is most probably a very effective type of feedback. So, specific. Let us see how can you give feedback that could be very general, not that effective, and how can we make it more specific, something that a learner or a teacher can actually make use of. So when I say, for example, to a teacher, if I visited a teacher's class and I said to them, you have great classroom management. Well, this is really good. It's something that any teacher would be happy to hear, but a teacher would be happier to know why I have great classroom management. Which parts of my lesson, or which area of my performance that gave this impression to the person who visited my class. So it could be even better if I say you have an effective routine in place so that students know what to do when they finish work early. Here, the person giving the feedback is referring to specific area of the teacher's performance. Maybe the teacher here had a task for all students, and those who finished early, he had a task ready-made for them, and he made them busy so that everybody was involved, everybody was busy doing something during this task. So when I refer to this particular part and I relate this to classroom management, I'm doing 2 things. First of all, I'm giving evidence, I'm relating to the point that I'm referring to. And secondly, I'm driving the teacher's attention to the fact that this is part of classroom management. This something that makes or that gives the impression to anybody who attends my class that I have great classroom management. Because, you know, again, a lot of people mix the concept of classroom management. We sometimes superficially look at classroom management by, you know, a teacher who is strict, a teacher who can control the students and so on, while this is, you know, a very narrow viewpoint of classroom management. Classroom management is a broad topic. So by giving the details, I'm also driving the teacher's attention to the fact that classroom management is that broad, and this is part of it.
So
So
it's one thing to say, Ahmed, you're doing a very good job. But it's another thing. Ahmed,
yeah,
let me tell you why I like what you're doing. You are very specific in listing the points, and they're very clear when you list them the way you do. That's specific feedback.
yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we forget that with students sometimes. Good job, Ahmed, for the assignment. Put a nice smiley face on the paper without any specific reason why you're saying that.
Yeah, or praise of a certain part of the assignment that you know drew your attention, or that was outstanding in that specific assignment.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So specific. Number two, tied to evidence. I can say your classroom was really noisy today. This is a kind of negative feedback. It could be well understood by the teacher, but you know, again, if you tie this to evidence, if you, because we don't expect that, for example, a 40 or 45-minute lesson was all noisy. Maybe there are certain parts of the lesson that was noisy and that wasn't healthy, you know, because not all the noise is something negative. But for example, when you say, I noticed students at the back table were not able to hear your instructions. Here is, you know, a weak point due to the talking on the side and they lost time during the activity. Here is the effect of not listening to the instructions, waiting for you to come over and explain to them. You know, when, again, when you mention this specific part, when you give this evidence, you are actually proving your feedback to be effective enough. Because noisy, maybe the teacher would say, well, I didn't think it was that noisy. Because noise might be like, for example, you know, something that happened, you know, only now and then, and not repeatedly, and sometimes it doesn't affect the class as a whole. But when noise, as explained in this specific example, leads to students, you know, wasting time and not knowing what to do. So this gives evidence to the feedback. This shows the teacher which part I am talking about. This also gives them insight about future classes, what they should avoid in their future classes. So specific, tied to evidence, actionable or includes action steps. For example, this feedback isn't actionable. When I say in this lesson, student didn't know the purpose of the lesson based on the questions they were asking, make sure the objective is clear to students. Again, well, this is a very good piece of advice, but how can I make it actionable? You know, especially if you're talking to novice teachers, teachers who don't have enough experience and don't actually know how to make sure the objective is clear to students. So if I give some tips about this, then I'm making this actionable. Like in this lesson, it was unclear if the students knew the purpose of the lesson based on the questions they were asking. Identify and communicate a clear lesson objective for students, stating what they will be learning and why. Post the objectives on the board so students can see it. Introduce the objectives at the beginning of the lesson and refer to it as needed throughout. So here I'm giving, you know, actionable steps to the teacher. I'm telling them, I'm guiding them, I'm coaching them, I'm telling them how to make, you know, the objectives clear to the students, when and how, can I make it clear? When should I relate to the objectives throughout the lesson and so on? Number four, checked for follow-up. The observer and the teacher will agree on specific time in the future when the observer can return to see the improvement in action. This is very important. Let's say, for example, I gave you a list of tips. Some of them are positive, some of them are things that you need to work on. Definitely, when you highlight areas of improvement, you should agree with the teacher. Like, for example, I'm going to come to you in 2 or 3 weeks, and I'd like to see that this will improve in your next lesson or lessons and so on. So it is not just a one-time show, when you just give the feedback and you say bye. You have to come back, you have to follow up, and this follow up is really important because, for example, if you have um, 5 points that you need to work on, nobody will improve everything, all at once. But for example, in 2 weeks you improved 1 or 2 points. Later on, you can improve several points and so on. By doing this follow up, you make sure that the teacher knows which areas still need improvement. The teacher will be happy to hear that, for example, certain areas have already improved, and will make sure that this improvement, is consistent and continues in future lessons. So checked for follow-up is also a very important feedback, effective feedback strategy, kindly delivered, and this will be relevant to the language of feedback. And definitely, it is very important. Some people are very tough. They don't actually watch their language when they give feedback. Like, for example, you shouldn't have distributed the worksheet before making sure all the students understood the task well. Well, you can say so, but you can actually express, the same idea in a better way. Like, for example, by asking a question. Do you think it was better to check students' understanding of the task before you distributed the worksheet? If you look at both sentences, it is almost, the same language, the same words used here and there. But the effect of asking a question like the second one is really important, because it gives the impression that you are making a dialogue. You are not giving orders, you are not giving instructions. That's number one. It makes the teacher thinks from your own point of view. It makes the teacher, makes a decision about what should be done in the future, or share the decision with you, not just you giving them the decision and telling them to apply this in their future lessons. Finally, feedback should be student-centered. So it is more likely to be translated into improved practice if the teacher can clearly see the ramifications for student learning. Observation can easily overemphasize teacher actions by using checklists, rubric, focus on what the teacher says and does without analysis of the student learning, focusing on how students exercise observed lessons rather than how the instructional leader views the lesson is important. Again, so it is very important to try to make the student who receives the feedback see the process from their own point of view. And this is also relevant to the previous point. When you ask a question, when you ask them to reflect on their own performance and give you an answer to this. So this makes it much more effective. So let me just remind you of the 6 features again. Sticks: specific, tied to evidence, actionable, let me checked for follow-up, kindly delivered, and finally student-centered. Types of feedback, and this is, Ray, what you asked me about. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I think um, we can assume what each means. I'm going to go through them very quickly. Types of feedback. Feedback can be verbal or written. Verbal, something that you say, written, something that you write and you give it to someone to read the feedback. It could be audio or video. And we see a lot of platforms nowadays in which, for example, a teacher can record an audio feedback to a student or can even have the option of recording a video for the student. And I believe the more we do it, this video and audio feedback, the better our emotions, our intonations, can be delivered to the students. We always say, even not only in education, in business, in life, in general, that words, when you read something, when you chat with somebody, words, come out without real feeling, real emotions. You might be saying something really kindly, but when somebody reads it, they might get offended. They might think that you are shouting. They might think that you are angry. Uh, However, when you record something, audio recording or rather video recording, you know, um, uh, more meaning is actually delivered to the person receiving this feedback. There is also peer feedback. Feedback doesn't always come from a teacher or from a mentor. Feedback can come from a peer, can come from another student in my class if I'm a student, can come from a co-teacher or someone in who is a staff member. And a lot of schools have this as part of their school policy. They have, the peer visits and people giving feedback to each other and so on. Um, Feedback can be delayed and can be real-time feedback. And let me spend some more time on this part because it's very important we talk about education. Let's suppose that you are explaining, for example, um, let's say a grammar lesson. Uh, you're explaining, let's say the present perfect tense or the past simple tense or any English grammar lesson, or you're teaching vocabulary and you have a set of new words that you are teaching your students. Normally, in a grammar lesson or in a reading or vocabulary lesson, you are not just giving, this grammar portion or this vocabulary or this reading. It's in an entire lesson with a lead in, with like a pre-reading if it has reading, with a context if you are teaching grammar in context and so on. You might, after the presentation stage, have a speaking activity or a writing activity and so on. So if you are looking at a 45-minute lesson or a 1 hour lesson, it has so many tasks and it's usually classified into portions or it has stages. Um, a very important question, and a lot of research is made on this point, is if you are a teacher and, for example, there is a conversation or a speaking activity that you are doing during your class, and a student or some students made mistakes while they are speaking or in writing while they are writing. Are you supposed to give the feedback on the spot? That's the real time for feedback or instant feedback. Or should you delay the feedback to the end of the lesson? Or should you not give the feedback at all? And there is no right or wrong answer here because it all depends. It all depends on the lesson, your objectives behind this lesson, the nature of the students, the amount of time that you have. There are so many, factors that will tell you whether to give instant feedback or you should delay the feedback to the end. But in a nutshell, this is what many agree on. If you're explaining a grammar lesson like the present perfect tense or past simple tense, and a student makes a mistake in the core of the lesson, something that would conflict with the objective of your lesson, like for example, you're explaining the conjugations of verbs, and somebody say I seed instead of I saw, for example, while this is part of the core of your lesson. So a lot of researchers, a lot of educators say, here, you shouldn't delay the feedback. Here, you should give an instant, real-time feedback. Why? Because this is the core of your lesson, the main objective of your lesson. If you don't correct the student at this stage, they might think they are right. Other students might think this is correct. Postponing this might even be might make it more difficult for you to fix the error at a later stage. So some errors should be, fixed instantly, real time. However, if you're giving the same lesson and in a speaking activity, the student mispronounced a word or used wrong vocabulary or didn't have good sentence structure when it comes, for example, to the passive voice or anything else. Um, Again, many educators agree that you shouldn't interrupt. If, for example, you have students in groups, they are busy talking to each other, your job at this part of the lesson is just a monitor, somebody who just goes around and makes sure students are doing the activity in the best possible way. It is better if you have a small piece of paper. When you hear a certain mistake and you would like to comment on, you just jot it down as a teacher, and maybe at the end of the class, in the post activity correction stage, which is a term currently used as PACS, you may highlight the points that you would like to comment on or to focus on or to discuss with the students. And there are also techniques for introducing these errors and discussing them with the students. So this is a very important concept, delayed feedback and real-time feedback. Definitely, if we talk about a teacher trainer visiting a teacher, and I think most of us would agree that delayed feedback would be the best, because you as a visitor shouldn't interrupt the class. Uh, you might actually do so. However, there are like so many conditions that you have to satisfy if you're doing so. But in order not to put the teacher in an embarrassing situation one way or another, it is very important to delay your feedback. If there is a fatal error, even the teacher did during the class, you might even say it, privately if you could do so, or even at the end, and you ask the teacher to correct this mistake, uh, in the following lesson. Uh, Finally, there are two recent types of feedback: digital feedback and gamified feedback, and they are relevant to each other. Digital feedback, just like when you play Kahoot or quizzes or any online game, and there are automatic questions like MCQs and true and false and so on. Sometimes you give an answer and you receive the feedback uh, through this platform. This is digital feedback. And there's also gamified feedback, which we will see right now. Um, Gamified, usually when it's relevant to the, the game mechanics, especially when there is a score, there are badges, and so on. Gamified feedback can be exemplified in so many platforms, like, let's say, for example, in Class Dojo, which many teachers use, it has gamified feedback. Usually, Class Dojo is more or less a behavior, control tool that teachers can use. It gives points, but it has, badges for students. It has points. It has scores. So normally, when students do well, whether behavior wise or even academic wise, you can give points and students, become very happy. This is a kind of digital and, of course, gamified feedback. Kahoot also is a tool that has digital and gamified feedback. Duolingo is also another tool. Quizzes, Socrative. So all these tools are tools that provide gamified feedback, and definitely any game, or I wouldn't say any, but most gamified feedback tools are digital feedback tools, because actually you can give verbal feedback, and a teacher can gamify this. It can be done manually, but not many teachers do so. Um, um, Very quickly, I'm going to highlight, automated feedback software. This is something that has developed a lot in the last decade. Um, I guess we all know what Grammarly is, you know, because we go online, maybe while you are sending an email, while you are doing something on any website online, you see a suggestion that you need to, for example, fix a grammar error or a spelling mistake or whatever, and you see Grammarly. Grammarly is an automated feedback software. It's a software that can help you write better, so it fixes your errors. Grammarly is just one example. There are other similar platforms just like Grammarly, and definitely with the appearance of AI recently, there are so many applications that can help you in this regard. So automated feedback software can help you get feedback about your writing, or even if you are doing a certain quiz online, you can get feedback on your performance in these quizzes. Um, Cambridge, the British Council, and so many, and some universities nowadays, they are trying to develop, for example, placement tests that can be automatically checked. So how can this be automatically checked? There has to be an automated feedback software. The more subjective questions a test might include, the more complicated this software should be. But what I believe is that with the appearance of AI, very soon we will have, amazing automated feedback software that can, do the job uh, in an amazing way. Uh, the best thing about automated feedback software, two things: efficacy and consistency. Because AI driven tools save time, provide immediate feedback. Uh, Even if there are 1,000 people getting, the quiz one at a time, the feedback is instant. No human being can do so. So it's very efficient, it's very quick, and it is consistent, because normally we as human beings, we make mistakes. Sometimes you are tired, sometimes you are not attentive enough, sometimes there is a correct answer that you mark as wrong, or a wrong answer that you mark as correct. But this is not likely to happen when it comes to automated feedback software. So I'm going to skip this and go to the last part of this presentation, which I believe is really important, which is the language of feedback. Forgive me if I'm talking very quickly. I just want to like finish the entire thing all at one shot, and we might have like 5 minutes at the end for discussions. Um, there are two types of language that anybody can normally give feedback through: judgmental feedback and exploratory feedbacks. The judgmental feedback, as the name itself suggests, it's like, it's like a judge speaking to, a victim. So it focuses on criticism and areas of improvement. Like, you did so and so and so, that wasn't good, that wasn't good enough, you should have done so, you shouldn't have done so, and so on. This kind of language that we see. And here at this part, if you would like to see how important language is, think about the head teacher or teacher trainer giving feedback to a teacher about the performance. You know, think about it that way. Um, I don't think this language of criticism and focusing on areas of improvement uh, would be very kindly accepted by everybody. Uh, However, there is a cleverer way to convey your feedback, to express the same idea that you have. It just needs, a mentor who is wiser, who is, more eloquent and somebody who has, leadership abilities. Exploratory feedback promotes inquiry. That means it makes the person you're talking to inquire about the performance rather than get a straightforward statement. No, give a question that would make the teacher himself or the teacher herself say, yes, that wasn't that good. It was better to do so and so and so. Okay? It promotes self reflection. It makes the teacher reflect upon his or her own performance rather than getting somebody judging what they did. And problem solving, because if you inquire, if you reflect, and you identify your areas of improvement yourself, your next step would be how to solve this, how to avoid this in the future. Now I'm going to uh, uh, show you a list of judgmental feedback sentences, and then we're going to change these sentences. We're going to see how we can, just by rephrasing them, we can entirely change the situation, and I would say sustain the kind relationship between between us in the educational setting, in a school environment. So look at these 8 statements. Judgmental feedback. Why didn't you explain the aim of your lesson? Your transition wasn't smooth. You didn't allow for enough time for this task. Some learners weren't clear what to do for your first task. You need to check your instructions. You should have given the fast finishers something extra to do. It would have been better if you had played the CD twice instead of just once. The reading activity went on a bit too long. Don't you think it would be a good idea to set a time limit for the pair work task? Again, all these statements doesn't include any kind of humiliation or harsh language or whatever. These might seem to be normal sentences that you might use in order to show the areas of improvement. But when you think of them, because not all teachers would receive them the same way, when you think of how you can improve this language, how can you make it, how can you convey the same idea without, spoiling the atmosphere between you and the teacher receiving this feedback. Look at the first one. Why didn't you explain the aim of the lesson? Look at one here. What would be the advantage of explaining the lesson themes? So look, a very important word that we always need to avoid. This word, you. Usually, when you are a teacher trainer, when you are an administrator, you're giving feedback, when you use the word you, it is, usually like you're pointing your finger to somebody who is guilty. You are guilty. You did something wrong, But look at the question. What would be the advantage of explaining the lesson aims? Now, the teacher wouldn't be part of the discussion. They will just, you're taking the teacher out of the context of being a teacher, context of being somebody who did something wrong. You are making a dialogue, you are making a discussion, you are asking them to inquire, to reflect, to try to find solutions for this. Even if the teacher couldn't answer the questions, you might give your own answers, your own suggestions. They would be accepted, they would be nicely received by the person you are giving the feedback to. Look at number 2. Your transition wasn't smooth. Look here. I didn't feel there was enough scaffolding or enough transition or whatever. So instead of your transition, I didn't feel it that way. Maybe it's a problem. So let's think together how we can do it better in the next time. 3, you didn't allow for enough time for this task. Did you notice how not everyone knew what to do on that first task? How could you find out if they have understood your instructions? So again, you're asking a question. You are not telling them they are guilty. You are asking them to think with you about the answer to this question, to focus on this part of the lesson. Look at number 4 here. Some learners weren't clear what to do for the first task. You need to check your instructions. Here, did you notice how not everyone knew what? It seems okay. I made a mistake here. So good. It's good that I made a mistake. This will be your task as attendees. I would ask you, okay, but let's keep this after we finish number 8 to to do number 4. Some learners weren't clear enough what to do for the first task. You need to check your instructions. No. It's number 3 that has the problem. You didn't allow for enough time for this task. Yes, 3 is wrong. Let it be our, I want you to think about it. How can you rephrase number 3 so that it would be more exploratory rather than judgmental? But let's just finish the others first. 5, you should have given the fast finishers something extra to do. 5 here, some students finished early and had nothing to do. How could you help them? Okay, so see, it's completely different. 6, it would have been better if you had played the CD twice instead of once. 6, I don't think learners understood the listening task very well after the first playing. What do you think? So maybe I'm wrong. Tell me your opinion. Okay, what do you think? How could you have helped the learners with this? If you think like me that they didn't get it well, so let the teacher himself say, I should have played this another time, a second time. 7, the reading activity went on a bit too long. Can you think of some options for shortening the reading activity? Okay. Finally, don't you think it would be a good idea to set a time limit for the per work task? Here, what would be the advantage of setting time limit for the per work task? So instead of just making the teacher think of himself, you, I did something wrong. No, I'm just giving a general question. Let's imagine that we're going to explain this lesson once more. Give me, tell me about the advantages of doing so and so, and if it's beneficial. So why wouldn't you do this in the future? Now back to number three. I'm done. I just want your feedback on number three. I look at the chat box now. If you could share your ideas. You didn't allow for enough time for this task. What could be a better way to express this type of feedback? Um, if you can just make sure your answer is to everyone so that we can see it, it would be better. Selma, do you think the time given for the task was enough? Very good. Do you think you could have allowed more time? Excellent. It seemed student finished the task quickly. What are some other things you can do to engage all the students throughout the time? Perfect, Jake.
Thanks, Ahmed.
Thank you. Uh, I think the time we allocated for the task was little short. What could we do subsequently? I like using we. You know, we makes the teacher thinks you are on the same line, you are on the same side, you are not competing. Excellent. You need to give extra time for them so that they can answer. Again, Umayma, I think it's better if we avoid you at all. Wafa, do you notice that most of learners couldn't finish the task on the limited time? Excellent. And even if you deleted the word limited, you know, on time would be enough. Um, Perihan, do you think giving more time to this task would be better? Excellent. This is an excellent replacement. Very good. Sarah, the task was challenging for the students. Again, this is kind of judgment. Okay. Try to turn it into a question. Try to avoid you. How do you think about giving the students more time for this task? Excellent, Hinar. Tony, what might be some strategies we can consider to meet the time limitations of the lesson? Perfect. Thank you, Tony. Yasmin, I saw some students cannot catch. Do you think they needed more time? Excellent, Yasmin. Maruf, it would be great if some more time had been given to the task. Perfect. Nelly, I think the limitation of time should be considered. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Uh, Denver, if the time was stretched a little bit, will it give expected results from the students? Excellent. That's an excellent one as well. Perfect, perfect. Ala, do you think the time was an obstacle for achieving better results? Excellent. How about we let the students engage more freely in this task to achieve better outcome? Again, this is a very good replacement. I'm really happy. I'm really happy about your feedback. Finally, managing the time based on our students' achievement. Uh, well, fine, but again, I think we can rephrase it even better. Let me stop the screen share. I think that was um no, no, no. I'm done with this. Let me just I'm ready to, if you have any questions, um, if Ray and Jake have anything to say.
Well, maybe
Well,
what we do.
I want to
Maybe what we
jump.
do is have we have the final Dr. Ray words of wisdom, and then when people are filling out the certificate form, the survey, then we can ask some questions. What do you think, Dr. Ray?
Yeah, I want to jump in with just one thought, Ahmed, and you really did cover it. And I wanted to, for those of you who recall the workshop we did several months ago, where we had a recording of a lady giving a TED talk, and she talked about a student who had turned in a paper that had 20 questions on it, and the student had missed 18 of them. And the teacher put on the paper +2 and then a smiley face. Now think about that. +2. And so the student came up to the teacher and said, well, is this an F? And she said, well, yes, but you didn't get them all wrong. Next time, I think you can do better. Now there's turning something very negative into a very positive statement. And I think that we fail to all of the things, Ahmed, that you showed regarding supervisors of teachers and so forth. We could consider the students in every one of those examples that you gave. And, you know, there's something humbling about a teacher who will ask students, how could we have improved the time allotment better? How could we have given more time for you to complete this, whatever, asking the students questions. And I think that many times students will come up with responses that amaze us. And so I just wanted to emphasize, I think the material you've given us today is outstanding, and it really makes us all think, wow, I can do better at this task. And it's really my body system smiling, accepting, and making sure that anytime that you have to say something, even if you have to, as you suggested, an on time or at the moment correction, smiling and accepting something positive from that student as soon as you can, so that it kind of erases if the student feels he or she did something wrong. So, wow, this is about 3 workshops full of material. But thank you, Ahmed, for this.
But
want-
Dr. Ray, if I can just have one last comment too, I really appreciated the workshop, not just because of how we interact with our students, but how we interact with other people in society too. How we interact with our teachers, how we interact with our children, our spouse. We're always giving feedback, and we need to do it in a kind, respectful way. And that's what I really appreciated about the workshop, and making it as a humane, a very respectful process.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Well, let me just, before we open it for questions, let me just share something with you that I recently read from a man by the name of William Arthur Ward. And I'm posting it in the chat room if you would like to remember this and maybe print it on your desk and remind yourself of it. And it is this: the average teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, but the greatest teacher inspires. I encourage us all to think about what we do and how we respond to things. The average teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, and the greatest teacher inspires.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. And we posted the workshop survey in the chat in both the people who are on Facebook and also on Zoom. So thank you for that. And so I think we'll open it up to questions, and we got to get our first man in here, Mr. Farouz.
Ferris.
Yes, it's Ferris. Perfect. So should I say good morning from China? It's like dead of night. It's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Hey,
Well, that's
great.
morning.
It's morning here.
That's morning. Just a different time of
Good
morning.
morning
than
from
we're used
China.
to.
Okay, Mr. Ahmed, thank you very much for your session. It was very informative, thoughtful, insightful. There are plenty of adjectives to describe your productive session. So my question is kind of quite a combined question. I've been, following you very keenly from the very onset to the very last minute. And at some point, you seem to have, answered my question already, but then still I felt like, okay, I need to ask this question. When you arrived at the exploratory feedback, I kind of seem to have a little bit of answer to my question, but then I felt like, okay, I need to ask this question anyway. Most of the times our approaches and techniques and methods, they seem to cover not the extremes. Like, I mean, what if you face a student who is largely disconnected, disoriented, and even demotivated? Don't you think all kind of effective, gamified, exploratory, and all those glitzy, trendy feedbacks may just seem to fall on deaf ears? Because in China, I've been here for about like 10 years, and drawing from my vast teaching experience in Chinese context, I've met those students very often, especially at public schools. Now I'm teaching at a high school here, and I have some students who are disoriented. I personally sat down with them. I had a tete-a-tete. I asked about their ambitions, future goals. They just failed or even struggled to answer. They don't have any clear-cut answer to what they're going to do with their future. And how on earth do you think any kind of super feedback is going to make a difference in their lives? Thank you.
Okay.
And one more thing I would like to ask you. I really want you to expand a little bit, if time permits, on gamified feedback, because that was something I was looking forward to from the very moment you laid out your session, because this is something like a gray area which is not really explored. So would you please tell us a little more about gamified feedback at the end of your session? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the two questions. The first of which is actually a very difficult question. And I wouldn't say this is only in the Chinese context, but we see these students everywhere. You will always, wherever you travel, in any country, in any city, in any school, you know, students are not the same, motivations are not the same. And I think addressing this issue is not only a teacher's, a teacher's job or a school's job. It needs collective effort, from the school, from home, from the media itself. We're going through, harsh times globally, I would say. The teacher's job inside the classroom is becoming more and more difficult, with the more and more students, getting absorbed by technology and social media and other things uh, um, so it's a very broad topic. If I speak about this, I'm gonna spend like a lot of time discussing this issue. But I would say, from my own point of view, um, we believe that the teacher's profession is the profession of prophets, and it needs a lot of patience, a lot of perseverance. You know, um, you're not gonna like fix the entire universe. But what I believe is that you should spend, the max of your effort, do your best to address every single student. And there is a sentence that I always tell teachers. I have an online school. We have hundreds of teachers and thousands of students. And usually at the beginning of every year and every now and then, I tell teachers this: open their hearts before opening their minds. So, because whatever skillful you are as a teacher, you you wouldn't, reach out for all your students if you don't open your hearts. These students who fall behind, uh, no, usually there is a reason for this. There is something that attracts this student. This attraction force can be up, can be down, can be outside. So I would say, if we as teachers do our best to maintain better relationships with the students, to build, common ground between us and between our students, especially at the beginning of the year, because usually the first impression lasts. And this is why you see in many schools at the beginning of the year, they don't just, the teacher doesn't enter the class, open the book and start explaining. There is, an icebreaker or many icebreakers at the beginning of the year, so that we understand each other better. We build, better relationships at the beginning, so that students would accept anything from us later on, even if your feedback is harsh later on. If they love you, they would, accept this with a light heart. They would understand that you're saying this for their own good, and so on. I'm sorry, this is a brief answer for a question that needs an entire session. You get my point? For your second question about gamified feedback, gamification is a concept that has appeared in the last 10 or 15 years. Simply, what is gamification? Gamification is using games element in the educational setting. But the important question, and thank you for asking this question, because I really didn't spend a lot of time explaining this. Why is it important to use games element while I'm teaching math or science or English or whatever? And the point, it's based on research. And I don't have the statistics now, but I can just give you approximate numbers, like 90 or more than 90% of American students, and this was a study made in the United States, and I think the statistics apply globally, play video games. More than 90% play video games. Even a high percent of adults play video games and play games with consoles and so on. So a lot of psychologists made research on this. What is it there that attracts people that much to video games? Why are they ready to spend like 5 or 6 hours in front of a video game without getting bored, while they just get bored after 15 minutes of your lesson? Why is it so? So they found that these video games have some elements that psychologically attract students. So if you use these elements and you apply them in the educational setting, you are more likely to attract the students more. They are more likely to enjoy the learning process. And here comes the gamification. So part of these elements are what? Part of these elements, that there are scores. When you play a game, there are scores. The better you play, the bigger score you have. So if you're trying to do something in your own lesson, or during the entire or on your LMS, for example, at your school, or whatever, that has scores, that has points. So these scores, these points would be a good motive for students to be involved in your lesson, and to try to perform better, and so on. So points, scores, badges, and we see this very often now. So badges, like for example, I don't remember any nowadays, but there are a lot of platforms that, for example, when you get 1,000 point, they give you a badge. When you give 2,000, they give you a higher badge. Like in the army, the more years or the better you perform, the better position you might get. So these video games, some of them have these badges. So now when you go, for example, to readtheory.org, which is a very well-known reading platform, the more quizzes you pass, the more badges you get. There are more than 90 than 20 badges. So after answering more questions, doing more quizzes, passing more and more quizzes, you get a higher badge and so on. These are games elements, and this is kind of feedback, because when you pass a quiz, when you answer questions correctly, and you get points and you get a good badge, this is a feedback. This is a gamified feedback that you get, and that would like make you more involved in this, make you love the learning process or the platform itself or the subject matter that you are learning. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you
Well,
did. Thank you.
You did, and please, two things I want to add here. Number one, about the badges. If any of you have ever played the game on your iPhone, 4 picks, 1 word, I want you to know that I have the badge of the very highest score in the world.
How many points do you now have, Dr. Ray?
I now have 494,000 points.
Wow.
But anyway, but you're right. There's something about that. And Faris, I want to get back to you on something you said. It's really important. I don't believe there is any student who is unreachable. We just have to find a way. And sometimes it could be that we're asking the wrong question or we're approaching it in the wrong way. And I think that's where we as educators really have to think carefully about, how do I reach this student? And maybe it's not in the general way. And maybe as Ahmed has suggested here, it is a matter of saying something that you're pretty sure, like, hey, do you like to play on your cell phone? What games do you play? What do you do? And start there. And I loved what you said, Ahmed. You first reach the heart, then you reach the mind. I love that. That is so important. So sometimes we need to remember, and we've said this before in workshops, the greatest thing that happens in class today might not be the lesson that you have planned. It might be something the students need. And if you get at their hearts, you'll get to their minds. I love that, Ahmed. Thank you for that statement. And
You know,
Dr.
let me add
Jake,
some.
we're looking at about 20 minutes past the time we're supposed to stop. So
Right.
For a few seconds, sometimes we get complaints
Yeah.
from parents. They say, well, the teacher talked about, you know, personal issues and wasted, let's say, for example, 10 minutes of the lesson. And I always say, if this is not their habit, if this is not something that happens, you know, every day, I wouldn't say this is a crime that the teacher made. Sometimes, you know, you need to discuss something personal, something that relates to these students, talking about a current event, a game, their opinion about something, an issue that they had with another teacher, you know. It all depends on how you handle this, how you approach this. But this is important because, again, we're not robots. So I'm not supposed to go into a 45-minute class, you know, having a lesson plan. I wouldn't be happy that the entire year I followed all the lesson plans and nothing else. There is a problem if if this happens, because we're human beings.
Yeah, we're more concerned about I taught it rather than they learned it.
Yes, yeah, that's a problem.
Dr. Jake, we need to, we had a question here and she just got off. I thought we'd
Yes,
take
Miss
one.
Marwa, I think.
Oh,
there
there's
she
Miss
is.
Marwa.
We'll take
Well,
one last question.
One last question.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. First, thank you so much for the wonderful workshop so far, Array Global. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you, Dr. Rain, on Dr. Firuz's question and the answer by Mr. Ahmed and the comments by Dr. Ray here. I always remember the Chinese quote, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me, engage me and I learn. So I have been thinking for a long period of time about the idea of integrating AI and gamification for enhancing 21st century skills. Why don't we integrate both booming concepts that are related to this, the vast technology so far, the
Mauro, you're
think, Ms.
breaking
Mauro,
up.
I think we're losing you. You're cutting in and out. So we didn't catch your question. So I think Dr. Ray, we weren't able to catch that question. So I think you're right. We're probably about ready to wrap up, and we're excited to see everyone on February 17th.
AI platforms and together with thorough logical. Okay, do you hear me well now?
No, we don't. I'm sorry.
It's really
No,
breaking
you
up.
kind of
Ms.
cut in and
Mauro.
out. Yeah. So I think, Dr. Ray, I think we're ready to wrap up.
Yes, and thank you again, Ahmed. A wonderful, wonderful
Excellent.
presentation. Areas where we all need to improve. All of us need to improve on that. We tend to want to give opinions pretty readily, but we don't ask enough questions. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending today. And we hope to see you next month, which as Dr. Jake said, will be the 17th of February on Saturday, and we'll be with you then.